What up guys, SuperMetal983 here bringing you another album review, and this time we've got some, we have got some riffs to digest for you today. But yeah, I'm going to be reviewing the new album from the band Dogtired entitled The Red Verse. This is a self-released album and will be released on June 3rd. Now, if you're not too familiar with Dogtired, they are a 4-piece groove metal band hailing from Scotland, and I've knew about these guys for quite a few years now, especially by name, but I've really started to get into this band over the past year or so, I would say, maybe a little bit less, when I discovered their last album that they brought out back in 2019 entitled The Electric Abyss. Now, this album, I'm not gonna lie, has become pretty much an essential and a go-to album for me when it comes to groove metal, because when it comes to groove metal, I like it pretty simple, heavy, chunky, and just there to provide us with some sheer riffs and intensity just to get me through the day. You know, I'm not after anything flash or reinventing the wheel, should we just say. I just want sheer riffs and heaviness. That's all I want when it comes to groove metal. And Dogtired, especially on Electric Abyss, they encapsulated that vibe that I was after so fucking well. And honestly, as I said, it's one of my go-to albums. I absolutely love this thing. Like, I'll listen to it just as much as the likes of old Five Finger Death Punch, Machine Head, Chimera, amongst others. There are so many great bands in the genre, and Dogtired should be talked about up there amongst the kings of the groove metal genre, if you ask me. So that was past year or so. Obviously, it's been quite a while since they released some new music, and now and behold, we have a new album entitled The Red Verse, which is going to be released in a few days. And yeah, you aren't ready for it. So yeah, let's get into this album, shall we? It's 10 tracks and runs around 51 minutes in length, and I'm not gonna lie, this has grown to become one of my favourite albums to listen to in 2022. Like, I've talked highly about a couple of albums this year. I mean, for example, we've got Cattle Decapitation, Viscera, ones that I've not talked about yet, of Sulphur, and Sleep Token, for example. All these albums have been absolutely fantastic. But when it comes to sheer fucking riffs in 2023, look no further, and you will quench your thirst, shall we say, with Dogtired's album, The Red Verse. Like, this album, to me, represents the perfect embodiment of why I love the groove metal genre, continuing on from Electric Abyss. Like, I love that album to death, but this one, to me, is the fine wine. Like, this is the quintessential when it comes to the groove metal genre. Like, from the first moment it kicks in with that crazy little drum fill, you know straight away, right? This is Dogtired, ready to bring the riffs, ready to bring the heavy, and just bring the absolute headbangers paradise with this album. And Fracture sets up this album so fucking perfectly, and the first thing that I noticed straight away was the overall production sound of it. It sounded chunky, it sounded thick, it sounded beefy, and it gave it a bit of an old school sort of vibe when listening to it. Like, it didn't sound at all too overly polished, like, or pristine, should we just say. It felt gritty, it felt quite dirty in an essence, like some dirty riffs. Like, you know, if you're gonna execute some really filthy chugs, you've got to have a filthy, thick guitar tone behind it, and it not to sound too cleaned up. It really needs to hit hard and just fill you with might and just overall just intensity when listening to it. And this album, in my personal opinion, hits that spot and hits that mark perfectly. Like, the overall guitar tone is very chunky as well, but the drum work as well, it sounds very natural sounding, like, behind the kit. It doesn't sound too compressed or should we say overly mixed. It sounds very natural, but that's what gives the groove metal genre a lot of character, especially back in the early days. There's like a bit of a sense of like a feel of like Sepultura how should I say, a natural sort of sound and organicness to the overall production. Like, it feels like it's not made in 2023. It feels like it was made like about 10 years ago, or even like maybe even 12 or 13 years ago even. It sounds like it's a little bit more old school feeling, but still feels modern, in that it fits in with the crowd. It fits in, like this band could play with say a metalcore band and fit in. They would play with another groove metal band that would fit in, but also they could play with like a death metal band, for example, and they would fit in, because the thickness and the overall chunky factor behind all the instrumentations give it that aggressive feel that it can just slot into a genre or a mixed bill like that and still feel like a part of the scene, shall we just say. It really expresses that to me. That's why I love Dogtire, because no matter what sound they play throughout this entire album, which I'll get to in a second, it all feels just part of the unit. Like, the whole flow of this album just feels very natural and very organic, and it just, when you think you've got a really interesting or even favourite riff, they slap you with another one to the left, to the right, and you're just like, yeah, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to get you all excited and just ready to just headbang in your room. You know, like, there was even a couple of times, like, you know, you could get out the shower and your hair's all soaking and you're just drying up, and then you'll just start windmilling just because you're listening along to this album and just having a good time. And that's what this record does. It just feels like a really enjoyable listen to me, and that is one thing of the groove metal genre. It just stands out amongst the others. Like, it's quite an underdog nowadays, but at the same time, there are still bands like Dogtire who keep that sound alive and give it that overall oomph and still have little modern feels in there. Like, particularly on the song, which is probably my favourite song on this entire record, is The Wall. That one seems to me like a bit of a more lower tune sort of chugathon, should we just say. Like, it feels like the lower tune just adds to a more modern feel to it, and it might be in the same tune, I'm not so sure, but it just sounds thicker and lower tune, that it really hits a more darker aspect to it. And like, there's a couple of moments on here where the overall song and landscape of the tracks definitely transcend into a more darker, more abrupt sort of feel. Like, the best way I can encapsulate it is if you take like the Electric Abyss's artwork and compare it to the Red Verse. Like, you can see like the Electric Abyss, it still has its riffs, don't get us wrong, but the Red Verse kind of symbolises more of a darker, more corrupt sense. Like, there's a bit of a more epic, more brutaler in some ways aspect to it. Like, I'm not saying it's like slammy in any way, I'm just saying like it just feels a bit more diabolical to listen to, but it really fucking works if you ask me. And in particular on that song, I really, really enjoyed it. The first track that they released from this album, which is the second track, Eyes of the Divine, is another absolutely incredible song. And when you get into that track following Fracture, you get into the riffs and you just feel it and you're just like, yes. And that was, I would say, one of the, probably the strongest track you could put out there as your first single, because I really enjoyed listening to this album. But when that track dropped, I was like, yeah, that was what I was hoping for. But also, I will say, another song that I really, really enjoyed was Godless, Carrying Pitch, which is another incredible, incredible song on this record. And the one thing that I will take from this album that really, I think made us click quite well with Dogtire in a way, is the vocal performance from the band. Like, and actually before, I will say the bass as well. The bass work on this record is absolutely incredible, providing a lot of thickness and a lot of depth to the overall sound, with the thick, chunky guitar, with still a little bit of clarity to hear that note and expressiveness, but the bass just is there surrounding the mix and just making it sound absolutely massive. I absolutely love that factor because you can hear it. It's pretty audible. Really, really big props for that. But yeah, the vocals on this, they kind of, in some ways, like the more mid-tone shouty sort of stuff really put me in mind of the likes of Max Cavalera, Sepultura and Max Cavalera's stuff with I would honestly say more with Cavalera Conspiracy than Soulfly, to be honest. Like, his aggressive work on Soulfly is pretty potent in general. Like, that kind of mid-range, shouty sort of vocal. That's the kind of influence I definitely take from that. But I also like the aspect of the, like, lower, more death metal sort of vocals that kind of put us in mind. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but kind of put us in mind of the singer of Memoriam, formerly of Ball Thrower. So that sort of tone where it's kind of like got a lot of pronunciation behind it and a lot of like different sort of like unique sort of tone to it that really sets it apart from like the power and the in some ways kind of feels like majesty and monolithic like half screams that like tower over you, whereas those lows kind of like feel a little bit of a like give it a bit more depth, I would say, like a more lower register that really sets it apart. And I mean, if it was just all that sort of thing, it would sound cool, but it wouldn't have a lot of like variety to it, and that's what it really brings to it, those two dimensions of the overall sound on this record, vocally anyway. And the lead work as well is absolutely extraordinary, and some of the softer parts that really how should I say it, the softer moments on this kind of give it that kind of like journey-esque to it. And I say this a lot about a lot of records, but when bands like add these like softer elements and these not so much chilled back, but these darker, softer, doomier sort of moments, it really gives it a lot more feel. And Dogtired have represented that on this record, with it feeling like a journey through a dark, you know, landscape, should we say, like the artwork represents. Like, you feel like you're wandering through there, just getting punished by the elements, but it feels incredible. It honestly feels absolutely incredible to hear. And I think that Dogtired, there's a lot of people who talk about them in the scene and high praise them, and now I completely get why. From discovering Electric Abyss to Redverse, I have fallen in love with this band. These two albums to me are a duet of perfection. Like, I need to go back and explore their previous albums before Electric Abyss, but for me anyway, I just can't get enough of Redverse. It just sounds absolutely massive. It's a riff fest, like, it's chugs for days, and it's just such an enjoyable record to listen to. Like, I can't turn this album off, and it is such a delight. And I'd just like to thank the guys in Dogtired for giving me the chance to review this album, because this has just been incredible, an incredible experience to listen to this, and I hope to catch them. I know they're playing Gateshead later on in the year, but I think they're playing they're playing Trillions with Soldier Jack Ketch, Boz and Kraken Waker, so I'm hoping I can get down to that, because that's going to be an absolutely amazing show. And to hear some of these tracks like properly and just be there to just be in awe listening to them, it's going to be absolutely amazing. But yeah, I would definitely recommend you check out the song Eyes of the Divine, The Wall and Godless Carrion Pit. They are and also I will also recommend the last track, the title track, the Redverse, is another incredible song. And I will say the last two tracks, Pillars of Phobos, I've never been able to pronounce that word, Phobos, and the Redverse clock in at nearly 8 minutes 1 for Pillars, and Redverse is 7 minutes 52 seconds. Just a long, like, you know, kind of feels just massive conclusion to the album, and it really fucking works if you ask me. But yeah, Red Verse is an absolutely incredible song, and this is an incredible album. Make sure you check out Dog Tired and their new album, The Red Verse, which will be out on June 3rd, self-released. Make sure you support the guys. There'll be links down below. For an overall score though, I'm going to give this a solid 9 out of 10. One of the best records I've heard this year, and one I continue to listen to and continue to find stuff that I absolutely adore about this band and this album. So make sure you check it out. It's going to be absolutely incredible when it drops on June 3rd. Make sure you check out my Riffs for Days playlist, link down below, and make sure to subscribe. More videos are on the way. But yeah, I'll see you until next video. Remember, stay metal, and I'll see you later.